I promised myself I wasn't going to record this video. I wanted so badly to be wrong, but there were so many things, so many confirmations, that I had to come and record it. I truly hope that when the cup ends and the referee blows the final whistle, what I was shown does not happen. Maybe this video will even get deleted, because they don't want me to share this kind of information. So please pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you all. No matter which country you're watching this video from, let it spread all over the world, because this is a global warning. God gave me 7 signs that will begin after the World Cup. And from the bottom of my heart, I truly hope you've seen this video, because the information God gave me here is going to help you protect yourself and your family. The 2026 World Cup final will take place on July 19th. Today is not yet July 19th. And that's why I couldn't wait any longer to share all of this. Because this time, what Jesus showed me didn't come from an event that had already happened. It didn't come from a ceremony I could watch again, pause, analyze frame by frame, searching for hidden symbols. It came before. It came in a way that left me feeling completely ungrounded for days. I was sleeping. An ordinary night. Nothing special. No different prayer before going to bed when I suddenly woke up. The whole room feeling colder than it had been just minutes before. The clock on the wall read 3:13 in the morning. I remember that exactly because it was the first thing my eyes saw when they opened. And he was there. I won't describe again what I've already described other times about what that presence feels like. I'll just say one thing. This time, he didn't come with his usual peace. He came with urgency. And I understood, even before he opened his mouth, that what was about to follow wasn't meant for me to keep to myself, it was meant for me to tell. I sat on the bed until sunrise, writing everything down in an old notebook, my hand shaking, afraid of forgetting some detail before I could record it. I spent days reviewing every word, every image, trying to understand why this vision felt different from all the others. And then I understood. It wasn't different because it was scarier. It was different because this time he asked me to tell it beforehand, not afterward. Over the past few days, I've received messages from people I never imagined would be watching this channel. A 72-year-old man from a small town I won't even name to protect his family wrote to say he'd had a dream similar to what I described last time, without ever having seen my videos before, until his daughter sent him the link in tears. A young woman wrote that she woke up crying, not knowing why, on the exact same night I had this vision. Another person, from a country that almost never shows up in the channel's comments, wrote just one sentence. I felt it before I even watched. I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that when the time draws near, the Spirit begins speaking to many people at once in different ways until no one can say anymore that they weren't warned. And that is what I need to talk to you about today. 7 signs. 7 things that will begin to unfold after the trophy is lifted, after the floodlights go dark, after the whole world goes back to its routine thinking the celebration is already over. Because it won't be over. It will have only just begun, and Jesus asked me to share each one of them, in the exact order he showed them to me, because each sign prepares the way for the next, like the steps of a staircase no one chose to climb, but that everyone will need to walk down at some point, one way or another. Let's go in order, and I ask you to watch until the end, because the 6th sign, especially, I only managed to record after praying for 3 days straight, asking for strength. The first sign, the home that forgot to pray. The first thing he showed me wasn't a disaster. It was a dining room, an ordinary family sitting at the table with the match playing on the television in the next room, the volume high, everyone eating with one eye half turned toward the screen. Full plates, good food, the children laughing at some joke their father had just told. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. There was no prayer before the meal. Not a single second of silence before starting. Just the noise of the match commentator, the goal cheers coming from the next room, the glasses clinking on the table, the fork already diving into the plate before a single word had been said. Jesus said nothing for a moment. He just let me watch in silence as if he wanted me to feel the weight of it before he explained. And then he spoke softly, almost as if he were sad to have to say it. Notice what has already disappeared from this table, even before the world outside begins to collapse. I asked what he meant, because to me, that scene just looked like a happy family with nothing wrong. He answered, "The habit of stopping." Before any sign appears in the sky, the first sign has already happened inside people's homes. Families have forgotten to stop together, even for just a minute, to remember me before anything else. I stayed quiet for a good while after that, because I thought about my own table. I thought about how many times dinner rushes by, distracted, with the phone next to the plate, no one saying "Thank you, Lord," before the first bite. In Psalm 127, verse 1, it is written that if the Lord does not build the house, those who build it labor in vain. In vain. No matter how many celebrations, how many gatherings, how many matches watched together around the same table, if that table doesn't have, even for 30 seconds, a moment of silence to remember who sustains everything that exists in that home. That was the first sign, and among the 7. It's the simplest one to fix, if you want to start right now. Go back to pausing before every meal. It may seem like such a small thing, almost insignificant, compared to the size of the signs that follow. But Jesus told me very clearly that this small habit is the foundation for everything that needs to come after. Because a home that has already forgotten to stop for God at dinner time will have a much harder time stopping for Him in a moment of danger. The second sign, the night without light. After the table, he took me outside to a large city, one I couldn't identify with certainty, but which felt too familiar to be pure imagination. Tall buildings, crowded avenues, people rushing out of work, each one in their own world, staring at their phone screens while walking, not paying attention to who was passing beside them. And then, in a single instant, everything went dark. It wasn't gradual, like an ordinary power outage, the kind we're used to expecting on stormy days. It was a sharp cut, as if someone had flipped a giant switch all at once across entire neighborhoods, across entire cities. Elevators stuck mid-ride, traffic lights dead, flickering one last time before going out for good, giant billboard screens, which seconds earlier had been showing colorful advertisements, dying with a dry crackle. And the people in the streets stopped walking. They stood there looking up toward the dark buildings with an expression I had already recognized before in other visions. It wasn't panic yet. It was that moment of quiet realization when someone understands, for the first time in their adult life, just how much they depended on something they never imagined could simply stop existing. Jesus told me, the darkness that's coming isn't just about electricity. It's a mirror. When the light that men built goes out, you're going to find out very quickly who truly carries light inside them and who was only shining because of the bulb that was switched on. In the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 12, He himself had already said that He is the light of the world and that whoever follows Him will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Keep a candle at home. Keep a flashlight, spare batteries, a radio that works without needing an electrical outlet. But understand that this is only the beginning of a much bigger list. The true preparation, what Jesus most wants you to understand in the second sign, is to keep within you a light that no blackout in the world can put out. Before I continue, I need to pause for a moment and share a message I received this week because it has everything to do with what comes next, and I cried the first time I read it. A woman wrote, "I heard what you said last time. I stayed awake all night thinking about my family, but I live alone, far from everyone I love, in a city where I hardly know anyone. What do I do when the danger arrives and I have no one nearby to protect me?" I read that question 3 times before I could answer, because it touches on something Jesus also showed me that same night, almost as if He already knew someone was going to ask exactly that. He told me, "No one who is with me is ever alone. Even in an empty house, even in a city where you don't know a single soul, if you know my voice, you have company." Hold on to that answer carefully, because the sign that comes now is precisely about distance, about places, and about what to do when you can't simply run to be near the ones you love. The third sign, the places that will weigh the heaviest, Jesus showed me a map. It wasn't an ordinary map, with borders drawn the way we learn in school, with pretty colors separating one country from another. It was as if some regions were darker than others, pulsing slowly like a bruise spreading beneath the skin of someone who doesn't yet know they're sick. He didn't show me the names of countries right away. First, he said, there will be places where tension grows faster than in others, not because I chose to punish these regions on purpose, but because these are regions where pride, greed, and vengeance had already been growing for a long time, waiting only for a spark to set it off. And then the names began to appear, one by one, lighting up on the map like little fires, border crossings that have already been tense for years, strategic ports that carry trade for entire continents, cities that concentrate important decisions made by governments and armies. He asked me to warn carefully, without spreading unnecessary panic, without pointing fingers at any particular people. If you live near an unstable border, near a military base, near a strategic trade route, pay extra attention in the coming months, not to live in constant fear, but so you won't be caught completely off guard. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 6, he himself had already warned that we would hear of wars and rumors of wars, but not to be alarmed, because this must happen, though it is not yet the end. Not yet the end, but a step. And every step exists so that we climb with our eyes open, watching carefully where we place our feet, instead of stumbling in the dark, believing the ground will always hold firm. The fourth sign. The table that will go without this was the sign that hurt the most so far, because it wasn't about some distant place on a map you only see on the news. It was about your own kitchen. Jesus took me inside an ordinary supermarket, the kind we visit every week without a second thought. Except the shelves were different, empty in entire sections. People with carts stopped in the middle of the aisles, staring, confused at spaces where there used to be rice, oil, flour, powdered milk, basic products no one imagines could ever run out. And the prices on the modern electronic tags you see in so many stores today were changing on their own right before my eyes, rising slowly, digit by digit, as if they had a will of their own. Jesus told me, it's not that food is going to disappear from the face of the earth. It's that the path to every family's table is going to become narrower, more expensive, more uncertain than you're used to. And he showed me a short list, which he repeated with me, slowly, until I had every word memorized, like a child learning the multiplication table. Rice, beans, oil, treated water, stored in clean, well-sealed containers, salt, candles, and the basic medications your own family already uses on a daily basis. He made a point of explaining the reason behind that list because he knew I would wonder if this wasn't just fear disguised as faith. Don't store these things out of fear, my daughter. Store them out of love, because whoever has enough can share with whoever doesn't, and whoever only thinks of themselves when hardship comes will discover too late the bitter price of selfishness. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 6, verses 6 through 8, it is written to go and observe the ant, which, having no commander, no overseer, no ruler, prepares its food in summer and gathers its provisions at harvest. The ant doesn't gather out of desperation. It gathers out of wisdom, while there's still time to gather without fuss, without rushing, without fighting with the neighbor. At the market. The fifth sign. The divided house of God. This sign made me cry while Jesus was showing it to me, in a way the others hadn't managed to yet because it wasn't out there in the world among strangers. It was inside the church. He showed me a full congregation like so many that exist out there, with pews filled from end to end, a band playing with all their heart, a pastor with open arms at the altar, asking everyone to raise their hands in worship. But in the weeks following the Cup final, something changed in that place, slowly. Almost without anyone noticing exactly when it began. I saw small groups forming in the corners of the sanctuary, whispering after the service, while the children played in the yard, unaware of the tension hanging in the air among the adults. Some saying that the signs I've been talking about are real, that it's urgent to prepare. Others saying it's exaggerated, that mixing soccer with prophecy is madness, that people like me and others who speak like me are spreading unnecessary fear through the congregation. And in the middle of that argument, love was cooling, slowly, without anyone noticing exactly the day it had started. People who used to hug each other warmly at the church entrance now exchanged a stiff greeting, avoiding eye contact, avoiding sitting on the same side of the sanctuary. Jesus told me, with a deep sadness in his voice that I had never heard from him before, the enemy doesn't need to tear down the walls of a church to destroy it from within. All he needs is for the people inside it to stop looking at each other as brothers and sisters. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 12, he had already warned centuries before that because lawlessness would increase, the love of many would grow cold. This sign doesn't ask you to agree with everyone around you, nor to pretend to agree just to keep the peace. It asks you to keep loving even those who disagree with you, even those who think you're overreacting, even those who laugh when you talk about these videos. Because division only wins when it finds hearts more willing to fight than to forgive. After the last video I recorded, I received a message that I carried with me all week, unable to shake it from my mind. A man wrote, "My wife thinks I've lost my mind since I started watching your videos. She says I'm living in fear, that I'm scaring the children for no reason. I don't know what to tell her anymore, and sometimes I'm not even sure myself if I'm right." I understand that pain, because it isn't easy to carry alone the weight of seeing what others can't or won't see yet. Jesus told me, when I brought that question to him in prayer, don't argue with her to prove you're right. Pray that her eyes open at the right time, in the right way. Arguing closes doors inside a home. Prayer keeps them open. Hold on to that answer carefully, because the next sign requires exactly that kind of patience and discernment. The sixth sign, the voice. Someone will use to deceive. This is the heaviest sign of all, and that's why Jesus asked me to save it for almost the very end, and why it took me so many days to manage to record this video without crying in the middle of it. He showed me an enormous crowd, gathered in a public square that seemed too large to fit inside a single country, listening to a man speaking from a high illuminated stage, surrounded by flags. I didn't see his face clearly. It was as if something deliberately blurred that part of the vision, as if Jesus didn't want me, at least not yet, to be able to point to a specific name or face. But I felt the effect he had on that crowd. People, worn out from blackouts that had already lasted weeks, worn out from war news arriving every day, worn out from prices that kept rising nonstop at the market, listening to this man promise to fix everything at once. Peace between enemy nations, the end of food shortages, guaranteed security for everyone, no exceptions, and the world, exhausted, receiving that as a deep relief, almost like a miracle after so much suffering. Jesus told me with a seriousness that chilled my entire body. He is going to promise to solve exactly the problems I already showed you, one by one, and that's why it's going to seem too good to be a lie. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3, Paul wrote so many centuries ago, as if he were already seeing this very scene. When people say peace and safety, then sudden destruction will come upon them. Peace and safety. Exactly the words this man is going to use, repeated in speeches, in interviews, in promises, broadcast to the entire world at the same time. Jesus didn't tell me his name. He didn't tell me the exact date he'll appear in full force before the whole world. But he asked me, insistently, to warn you. When someone promises to fix everything all at once without asking anyone to repent, without ever mentioning God, demanding only blind trust and applause, stop. Pray before you applaud. Ask for discernment before you believe. The seventh sign, the light that will point upward. And then, the last sign, the one Jesus saved to close the entire vision. He took me to a sky I couldn't identify with certainty over which country it was. It was as if it were happening at the same time in several different places around the world, as if the sky itself had become bigger than any border ever drawn by human hands. And suddenly, a light. Not the light of a spectacle full of special effects, not the light of fireworks celebrating a championship title. A distant, high, silent light, which appeared at the same time in different parts of the world, visible to everyone who happened to be looking up at that exact moment. The people below stopped what they were doing, dropped their phones, interrupted their conversations, and looked up, confused, not fully understanding what they were seeing, but sensing deep down that it was different from everything else. Jesus told me, in a voice that had finally regained that familiar peace, "This is not the sign of the imposter that you're going to see appear on the stages and giant screens of the world. This is my final warning before everything accelerates for good. This isn't so you'll be afraid when it happens, it's so you will lift up your heads." In the Gospel of Luke chapter 21, verse 28, he himself said, while he still walked the earth, that when these things begin to happen, we should look up and lift up our heads because our redemption is drawing near. Lift up your head, not lower it in despair, hiding your face. Lift it up in hope with your eyes open. This is the seventh sign, and it's the only one among the seven Jesus showed me that isn't a warning of danger. It's a promise. I know these are 7 heavy signs to hear all at once, in the same night, in the same video, a table that forgot to pause, a night with no light at all, places that will weigh heavier than others, a table that will run short in many homes, a church divided from within, a voice that will deceive with beautiful words of peace, and finally, a light pointing upward, promising that all of this has a greater purpose than any of us can see right now in the middle of the chaos. But before closing the vision from that night, Jesus told me one last thing, and it's the phrase I treasure the most out of everything, the one I repeat to myself every time fear knocks at the door of my own heart. He said, "I didn't show you all of this so you would live in fear, my daughter. I showed you so you wouldn't be caught by surprise. Whoever knows what's coming prepares in time. Whoever prepares in time doesn't panic when the moment arrives, and whoever doesn't panic can reach out a hand to those around them, instead of running away alone, thinking only of their own survival." The 2026 World Cup final will take place on July 19th. Today is not yet July 19th. There's still time to pause at the table before eating, even if just for 30 seconds. There's still time to store what needs to be stored, without rushing, without panic. There's still time to reconcile what can still be reconciled, inside the church and inside the home, before pride hardens for good. There's still time to learn to clearly recognize the difference between the voice that promises true peace and the voice that only imitates peace to deceive those who are too worn out to be cautious. Keep these 7 signs with care, not with terror. Not to live in fear, to live awake. Because a candle lit before the blackout is worth far more than 1,000 candles searched for in a rush in the dark when it's already too late to find the way to them. He is waiting in the silence where he has always been.